The human body is a temple, but what happens when it's defiled in war? From ancient Rome to modern times, battlefields have been stained with blood, each drop hiding sinister secrets that challenge our understanding of history. In this episode of Battles, we are going to uncover the dark realities of war by exploring the lesser-known and shocking uses for human blood from throughout history. Let's get into it. During the Second Punic War, Hannibal Barca led his army across the Alps, defeating Roman forces at the Trebia River in 218 BC. But little did his troops know they were participating in a deadly experiment. As the Carthaginians prepared for battle, they noticed something strange in the trees above them. The leaves had turned an unnatural red, staining the ground below. What they didn't realize was that the real source of the red was blood. A Roman spy who infiltrated Hannibal's camp beforehand had used red berries to mimic blood. This trick was designed to scare the Carthaginians, who believed the Romans had used a curse to turn the leaves red. But the ruse worked all too well, and Hannibal's men fled the battlefield in terror. Though ultimately unsuccessful, this incident gives us insight into the lengths to which ancient armies would go to gain the upper hand in battle. From turning leaves red to turning wine to blood, the use of human blood in warfare has a long and twisted history. During the Middle Ages, it wasn't uncommon for people to use blood in their everyday lives. Bloodletting was thought to be a way to cure illnesses and even balance someone's temperament. It was also used externally to stop bleeding and heal wounds. And it wasn't just animal blood either. People would often use their own blood or the blood of family members. In fact, King George X of England started a trend of royals having their portrait painted with blood instead of paint. Known as the Royal Blood Oath, this practice was supposed to symbolize the king's connection to his subjects. While this may seem strange to us today, it was common practice for centuries. Even during the plague, when fear and suspicion were high, people still used human blood for medicinal purposes. Unfortunately, these practices often backfired and made people sicker. But this didn't stop people from trying. In fact, a recipe book from the time period included a recipe for treating gout by boiling a frog in vinegar, then using its blood to make a plaster for the affected area. While this may seem gross to us now, it was commonplace then. And it's just one example of how human blood was used throughout history. In the Ottoman Empire, the Sultan's wife could only drink her cucumbers chopped so that she wouldn't accidentally ingest any seeds. But the concoction was much more sinister than that. To ensure the Sultan's wife's safety, the imperial chef would first chop the cucumbers, then strain the water through a piece of linen cloth to remove any remaining seeds. But the chef would then add something even more unusual, the blood of a young lamb. This was done to improve the flavor and texture of the dish, and was a common practice in Ottoman cuisine. While we may find this practice off-putting today, it was simply a part of their culture at the time. The use of blood in food is a common theme throughout history, often seen as a symbol of courage and strength. But the reality is much more grim. During the French Revolution, there was a balding epidemic, likely due to rampant syphilis. The rich bought elaborate wigs to cover up, while the poor had more drastic measures. They took the blood of executed aristocrats, either fresh or dried, and mixed it with the grease from the executioner's bread oven. The mixture was then used to dye their hair a reddish-brown color. While this may seem like a macabre fashion statement, it was really just a desperate attempt to conform to beauty standards during a time of great upheaval. Unfortunately, the blood often didn't stay contained and would end up staining the faces and clothes of those who wore it. The balding epidemic eventually subsided, but not before leaving a lasting mark on the history of blood usage. Moving forward to World War II, there was a bizarre incident involving a Japanese soldier and a nurse. The soldier had been injured and brought to the hospital where the nurse worked. She noticed that he had a strange tattoo on his arm, and when she asked about it, he told her it was a magical symbol that gave him superhuman abilities. Intrigued, she asked if she could take some of his blood to test the magic for herself. However, the nurse never got a chance to test the blood because the soldier's commander caught wind of her plan and intervened.
You will tell me what I want to know. I have nothing to say to you.
In a
I have
moment of
nothing
panic,
to say to you.
the nurse grabbed a syringe and stabbed the soldier with it, accidentally killing him. While this story sounds like something out of a horror movie, it's actually a true tale from history. It shows how blood was viewed differently around the world and how fear and superstition can lead to tragic outcomes. As the Cold War began to heat up in the 1950s, the U.S. government became increasingly worried about the threat posed by the Soviet Union. In response, they launched a top-secret project called Project 5151 to develop a biological weapon that could be used against the Soviets. The project involved infecting mosquitoes with a virus that caused hemorrhagic fever and then releasing them over the Soviet Union in the hopes that the disease would spread and weaken their population. However, the project was plagued with problems. The virus was difficult to weaponize, and the mosquitoes often died before reaching the Soviet border. In addition, the U.S. government was concerned about the potential consequences of releasing a deadly virus into the environment. As a result, the project was eventually abandoned in 1972. While it never came to fruition, Project 5151 remains a dark chapter in the history of biological warfare and shows the lengths to which governments will go to protect their interests. But perhaps the most sinister use of blood in warfare came during the Vietnam War. In 1965, the U.S. military began using a chemical defoliant called Agent Orange to clear the dense jungle undergrowth in Vietnam. Agent Orange contained a herbicide that effectively killed the leaves on plants, making it easier for soldiers to spot enemy fighters. However, the chemical had a devastating effect on the Vietnamese people. When it came into contact with skin, it caused severe blisters, resulting in third-degree burns. And when inhaled, it led to respiratory damage and cancer. In addition, the chemical had a devastating impact on the environment, causing massive die-off of plants and animals alike. One of the most disturbing aspects of Agent Orange is that it continues to have negative health effects even today. Many Vietnamese people who were exposed to the chemical as children have been born with birth defects such as missing limbs and extra fingers. While Agent Orange was eventually banned, its use during the Vietnam War remains a dark stain on the history of warfare and a reminder of the devastating impact of chemical weapons. Throughout history, blood has been used for a variety of purposes, from medical treatments to cooking ingredients. But the darker side of blood usage in warfare is equally important to understand. By exploring the lesser-known and sometimes horrifying ways in which blood has been used in battle, we gain a deeper appreciation for the complexities of war and its impact on humanity. From ancient Rome to modern times, the use of blood in warfare has been both fascinating and disturbing. Now it's time to hear from you. What do you think is the most shocking use of blood in battle? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more engaging content like this. See you next time.